Come back for the second video tutorial. In the previous video, we have shown you the step how can we create a new project and then run the application for the first time. Now, since the application is there, it is a good time to learn the application starter step by step from scratch. Okay, so if I were you right now, please go ahead and double click on main.das and then remove everything from here. So you can on PC, you can use Control A to select over here, or on Macintosh, you can place Commands and A to select all the text details and then hit delete on the key. Okay, so we are going to start from the beginning. So in this case, the application, okay, require an entry point function to run the application. So in this case, the application. So just like any other programs that you need a main functions for the Flutter, then it's required the main function as well. So in order to implement the functions, then you put the name of the functions, then put parentheses, beginning and the end of the function. So I'm going to put it like here. This is the end of functions. I put the comment to denote that this bracket denote the end of the function. And the function does not return any data, so that's why I put var in front of this as the data type as well. Now, for the basic introduction of this, it's required, okay, so say run the application for me. So in order to run the application for me, then we use the function run app. Now here is interesting. So the run app require an input. So we're gonna need to take some input right here, and that input is basically the object of a material, okay, widget. Now what is the meaning of widget? Now when you look at the application here, any UI component is made up of what we call widget class. So this is the class that allow us to display basic UI components, and different widgets will have different way of displaying and taking data from the user. For example, here we have a widget that we call a floating button here. We have a widget that we call the text. Okay, so and we also have the widgets that represent the app bar structure right here. So that means we should provide at least one widget to represent the application. We're going to go from scratch, so that the most easiest widget that we can provide is an empty box that we call material app. Now as soon as you put the material app, the system will automatically import this file for you, because in order to use this class, okay, this class is packages inside this file. Now the input of this is the widget, so we have to create an object of this class. Either you come here and then create the new object for this class, or you can just do it right here. So we say new, the name of the class, and put parentheses. Now this is just like in C# or Java, that you can create the objects and then take the objects as the input. Okay, so that the system can run this for us. Now let's go ahead and now, because there are two buttons that's very important for the understanding about the architecture of the application. One is called hot reload, the other one is called hot restart. Now because we are working on, okay, a basic introduction of a minimal structure, so it doesn't have structure that allow us to do hot reload, that whenever you apply changes, you can see it right here. So right now we still use a minimal structure, so anytime you want to see changes, you have to click over this button, which is hot restart. So go ahead and hit restart. This process will restart the applications, and as you can see that after this, okay, as you can see that it shows some error right here, because we have to specify some objects information as well. Now, if you still remember, let's make a quick recall for a class introduction for data. So for example, if you want to represent the information of the students, you may come up with the class students, beginning of the class and the end of the class. In here, you can put the class data member, such as integer. So for example, the integer that represent the ID, the string, the type that represent the name of the students. Now, unlike C#, the string here should have uppercase letter for letter S. Okay, that's the difference. Also now for this one, this is the basic of how do you create the class. You can also create what we call constructor so that we can initialize the object easier. For example, now if I would like to create a new student instance here, and I want to introduce the positional input, so I can go ahead and put one and Andy right here. But in order to make this happen here, I have to create a constructor function. And this is a special function that contains the name of the function just like the name of the class. It have parentheses and also take input for IDs and string of name. Now, what you need to do is just to initialize that ID equal to input of the IDs and initialize the name equal to the name of the input. So once this is available here, then you can go ahead and create the object like this. Okay. Now, in addition to standard class in C# or Java, then you can use what we call here. This is what we call the input. Okay. Are called positional parameter, because whenever you specify the input, you cannot use Andy first because Andy is belong to the second input. It is data type that belong to the name and belong to the second input. The first one should be the ID. If you misplace this one, it's gonna show the error message. Okay, so instead of remember the position of our parameter, so that's why does introduce the way that we call name parameters that allow us to initialize this by not looking at the position at all. For example, I can go ahead and say I want another student that I can specify the name equal to Cathy and to Cathy's and also the ID equal to number 2. As you can see that I like to ability to go ahead and take the input, specify the name of the input parameters, the value of input as well, and I don't need to worry about the location or the order of the input, just like the standard way right here. I can go ahead and in Dart, you can create another functions for constructors like this. So you can put the brackets, then you can say this.id and this.name. And in this case, right now, you can go ahead and initialize like this. Okay, so that's the benefit of the name. Okay, so here this is called the input are called name parameters, because whenever you want to take the input, you specify the name pair with the value as well. Okay, so that's the difference. Now, once you understand about this concept, you know that, oh, this one is basically a class that take input, right? So the input names that we need to go for, okay, so let me comment this. We need to go for is basically a student of this. Now, in material app, we have to specify one input parameter called home. And the home will take, okay, and widget. So in this case, the first widget that you saw earlier is what we call text. So you can go ahead and create the new objects belong to the class text. And you can take positional parameter, which is just the contents of the text, like hello. In this case, now you can restart your applications, and hopefully we should see the word hello appear in this direction, in this area. And sometimes depends on, yes, so now we have the hellos, and but you can see that it have double line in the yellow. That means you are not in the formal application structure, because you can see that the application usually have app bar, the scaffold areas, and then any other area as well. So this is to remind you that it's just like the introduction of minimal structure. Okay. Now, for that, as I told you earlier, that when you create the new object, you don't need to worry about using the word new. You can take it off. So in this case, you can just take off the word new, and the system, the Dart, still understand that you are trying to create the new object called material app, and in here, this constructor take one input, and it has the name called home, and this one also the input parameter that take an object belong to this text class. Okay. And now, one thing that I want to show you is that whenever you start working on Flutter, you're going to see that it contains an objects that have a child, and the child might have another child or students. So this is what we call widget tree. So in order to observe the widget tree, you can go to Flutter inspector here, and as you can see that we have an empty frame or empty block that represent what we call material app. The material app will allow us to design our application to support material design theme. Okay, so it's the themes that is the modernized way of representing the UI for mobile applications. As you can see now, we have the parents material app at the top. This one is basically a frame, and the text is basically a child. So instead of using the word child, the designer of the Flutter decided to use the word home. Okay, so but basically it's the child of these parents. Okay, so this is the first basic introduction of how can you understand about minimal structure of your applications, and the first introduction of the widget, which is the most easiest widget ever for the Flutter. We call text is the widget class from the text. Okay, so in the next video tutorial, we are going to talk a little bit more about how do we apply the styling for the text. Okay, I talk to you in the next video tutorial. Thank you.